Why would any normal person buy a one-way ticket back to the motherland, knowing very well that they may never come back, especially when everybody they know in their family is still out here in diaspora or in the US? So this afternoon, I want to tell you a story about one young woman who was undocumented in the US for a while, who made an incredible decision to self-deport back to the motherland, knowing all too well that having lived in the US without papers, she would probably never see the family she was leaving behind. Now, for the purpose of this video, I will call her Nancy, and that's not her real name. Nancy made a decision that many undocumented folks in diaspora are often faced with regularly. And this is especially a prominent issue now that you have right-wingers doing all kinds of things, especially in the US. But this sad story actually has a silver lining in the end. So please stay with me till the end, and you'll hear how it ends better. But before I tell you everything about Nancy and her journey, welcome to Kisumu, my friends. Kisumu is often touted as the cleanest city in Kenya, and it receives all kinds of accolades, deserved or not, but it's home. So this afternoon, we're actually spending time at my grandmother's home. This is my maternal grandmother on the right. She's one of 3 wives. In my life experience, this is one of the most incredible humans I've known in my life. She barely went to school, barely had much, but this woman loves us like crazy. And so whenever I get a chance, I grab the crew and we stop by, or whenever I have time by myself, I just come and just hang out with her and her co-wives. So we love spending time here. This is a place called Kisian, which is about 10 minutes from Karating. And that's where my home is. And it's about another 10 minutes to Kisumu CBD. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome to our channel. I'm a Kenyan American who is on transition to moving back to the village. And part of what I do is I spend a lot of time in Kenya, a few months in Kenya and a few months in Long Beach, California. And in the process too, I help returnees with construction projects, finding land, other real estate questions, and some other things related to returning to the village successfully. So if you need any help with any of that stuff, please reach out. And again, if you've not subscribed, just check. And if you're one of those, just add your name to it. We would appreciate that. So again, as I said, today we are going to spend the entire afternoon just hanging out with grandma. Nothing on the agenda, just coming and eating and just doing all kinds of things. And I'm going to show kids how to eat something we call maembe dodo. I don't know. Dodo is a type of mango. Using just chumbi, where you just get your unripe dodo and you change it on salt and you eat it. These young kids don't know what that is. This thing is grand, and you may have seen a short clip of it. So basically, we're hanging out with grandma for the afternoon as I want to tell you this story. So join me this afternoon and let's talk about the dilemma of being undocumented and taking a one-way trip outside the US. So Nancy's story actually, as an undocumented person, in my mind really epitomizes the dark world of living as quote-unquote an illegal immigrant. I tell you, Akumu, you don't know what anxiety, fear, and terror really looks like until you live abroad without the right paperwork. And pretty much almost everyone I know in my circle knows somebody who does not have papers or at some point never had papers. But that's a story for another day. Today, let's focus on Nancy, who was brought to the US as a 9-year-old girl many years ago. And the father came first, got some kind of a job under the table, started making his way. But before his papers expired, he organized for them to get a B1 visa, which I think is a tourist visa. And so as they were going to the embassy, of course, as a 9-year-old, Nancy was told, when you walk to the embassy, you're going to meet a nice person, but just tell them we are going on vacation to Disney. And as a kid, she was really excited. They went, got the visa, wonderful. They came to the US. Of course, they never made it to Disney. So the mom, Nancy, and the siblings transitioned into, I think they went to somewhere in the East Coast. And life started, the parents started working. And as is true with many immigrants, the parents move from white collar jobs where you're putting on your suit and tie and all that stuff. Then you come back to manual work, minimal pay, both parents working a million hours. So life was drastically different. I remember leaving Kisumu for the US. I was actually an administrator and an educator in high school, putting on suits and ties 6 days a week. And then I moved to Pennsylvania where I went straight to washing dishes. It's quite a transition, my friend. It's a big transition. So again, Nancy and the family transition, and life seems to be happening, but things were tough. So one of the things that Nancy notices is that the father, while he was still in their motherland, was a very loving guy. And then all of a sudden, Nancy comes and she meets this angry, abusive, very sad, and incredibly hostile man. And the father has really turned out to be something else. As a child, you can't make sense of it. But looking back, it was just the effect of the hard life that comes with being undocumented the first couple of years. My friends, I tell you, this life has a way of breaking down men and women. And so life became very difficult at home, both in terms of the changes in the parents, parents being away, very hard life. And so school was her refuge. So thankfully for her, Nancy really is a very smart young woman, very beautiful. She was doing really well. And she was lucky to find very good teachers. A lot of our kids don't. In fact, many of our kids, school becomes the second trauma space, where not only are they surviving at home, they come to school and then survival starts round two. Lucky for her, she had some really good teachers that got her through it, and she was able to do well until at some point the standard diet of racism started coming in. And our kids really suffer. Our kids, because for one, they don't really fit within the African community or the immigrant community per se, and they don't fit within the American community, so they're kind of floating in between. And issues of identity, issues of misunderstanding, our kids go through a whole lot. So then all of that is happening, and then this is actually not even the worst part of it. When these kids hit puberty, then the second dose of trauma comes in. When they discover for the first time that they're not documented, and they discover what that really means. Because many of our kids never even know that they're not documented, because when they came to the US, at that age, they're too young to understand how the systems work. And so when the kids turn 14, 15, 16, when they're going to get the driver's license, then they realize that, in many states in the US, you cannot get a driver's license if you're not documented. And that's one of the reasons why I stay away from these right-wing states like Texas, Florida, Alabama, and all the other, these are the places. In California, the West Coast, for the most part, you're fine. You'll still get a license. So shock on Nancy, she turns 15 and realizes that, she cannot even get a driver's license when her peers are all getting driver's license and all that. So this was also a very tough period in her life. Now when she begins to have an understanding of what not being documented really means. So life goes on, and again, things are getting tough, but she's making it through. And then after 22 years of living in the US without documentation, Nancy falls in love. And you don't even guess who. She falls in love with a young British, good-looking guy with his annoying British accent. And, this is when the second dose of not having papers hits her properly. Because at this point, she is an adult, married to somebody who can legally come to the US and live, can work in the US and move back and forth. But then she realizes that for her, she cannot move with her husband. She cannot even go on vacation with her husband outside the US. She can't even visit her husband's family in the UK. And the worst bit of it is that while living in the US, Nancy cannot even apply for a spousal visa for the UK because she's already in the US without documentation. Man, life can get really rough. Life can get so rough that it was very difficult. But friends, love is a very powerful demon. It makes us do certain things that can be very rational at some point. In fact, I may ask you this. Have you ever looked back at one of your exes and wondered, man, how did I get entangled with this wife of Ongong? It's whatever your heart does. So Nancy thinks about it and then decides she's going to buy a one-way ticket back home, because the only way she could get spousal visa was to go back to the homeland, apply for spousal visa, hope that things work out. In the meantime, when she's leaving everybody behind in the US, including her parents, her siblings, and everyone who she may never meet again. So she thinks about it, but again, she decides to buy that one-way ticket. And she describes this experience of walking into, I think it was JFK, getting the boarding pass, looking at her passport, going through that door, and knowing that that is probably the last time she's going to be in the US. And maybe the last time she's going to see her loved one in the US. It was not fun. She gets into the plane, sits by the window. And for folks who fly, when you're sitting by the window and the plane takes off, she is already seeing that I'm leaving the US. And then the plane turns. You see how the wings move, and then you're looking at the buildings, and then you're moving into the cloud. She just breaks down. And Nancy just started crying, just bawling her eyes out. In fact, one of the attendants just came to console her, but of course, at that point, nobody knew what she was going through. But she knew that at that point, it was probably the last time she would ever set foot in the US. Again, love makes us do things that are hard to explain using our rational senses. And so she moves, goes home, and thankfully for her, things are sort of working in terms of getting a spousal visa. She gets a spousal visa and is able to travel to Britain to join her husband. But in the process, unfortunately, her father dies. And at that point, again, with all that, she's not able to come, because a lot of countries have this thing that if you break immigration laws, they attach what they call an exclusion period. So for her, she's not able to come to the US for the next 10 years. So her father passes on. Of course, her father does not have papers. The rest of the family in the US don't have papers. So they couldn't travel. And she had to sit and watch her father's funeral on YouTube. Her story is not unique. A lot of returnees deal with things like this. So I'm telling you Nancy's story for one purpose, that if you've never been in that spot, I hope you have some kind of kindness when you meet people who are dealing with things like that, people who live without documentation, people who end up finding themselves at home against their will. There are many returnees who are deported. There are others who make that choice to self-deport. And again, not everybody has that option of self-deporting, because for some people, you're returning back to what? So I hope when you meet folks who return in those kinds of formats, I hope you are kind enough for them. Anyway, folks, that's the story that I wanted to share with you today. I hope you learned something. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Thank you and bye.